We're going to learn how to determine the interval distance, which is the number component of an interval. So if we have two notes on the staff, you begin by counting one on that first note. This is a common mistake. Don't start counting after you have already moved, but rather start with the number 1, and then you can count 2, 3, 4, 5, and so we know we have some kind of fifth. It's really that simple. We don't know the quality of this interval. We don't know if it's perfect or diminished or augmented, but we do know it is some kind of fifth. This is true regardless of the accidentals that may or may not be present on the notes. In this case, we just ignore that sharp on that B sharp, and we can count 1. We count 1 on the first note, and we don't need to move, so we know that we have some kind of unison. Again, we don't know the quality, but we know we have some kind of unison. Now, for larger intervals, here's a little trick. When you start by counting 1, if it begins on a space, each space above is just the next odd number. So in this case, if we were to line up the numbers, we can see, oh, we have a ninth. But you can confirm that by counting, and counting from 1 to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But again, if you start on a space and you move up by spaces, it's odd numbers. But likewise, if you start on a line and you move up by lines, again, it's just by odd numbers. In this case, we have some kind of ninth. However, we have a compound interval in this case because an 8 is an octave, or some kind of octave. And if it's greater than 8, then we have a compound interval. So you can describe a compound interval also in terms of its simple interval plus some number of octaves. To find the simple interval, you just subtract 7, or you subtract 7 several times until you reach one of the regular intervals. And in this case, we just subtract 7 once, and we get 2, so now we know that we have a second. A ninth is a second plus an octave. We can also see this in a different way, simply by transposing, say, the bottom note up an octave. And if we transpose it up an octave, we can use the same method to determine the interval, counting 1 on the note, then 2. We see that we have a second, and therefore the simple interval is a second, but it's displaced by 1 octave. If we choose a larger interval, let's kind of do this backwards and transpose first so we can see clearly that this is larger than an octave. Let's transpose this top note, G, down an octave. So there's the line G, we move that note down an octave, and then we proceed as follows. We start on the bottom note, we count 1, it's on a space, we know the space above is a 3, and then moving up to the next line, that makes a 4. We have some kind of fourth in this case. Now previously we subtracted 7, but in this case to find the compound interval, we can add 7, so we transpose by 1 octave. So we simply need to add 7 one time, so 4 plus 7 is 11. This interval is some kind of 11th.